It was a typical rainy night, the kind where the sound of raindrops pelting against the window was almost hypnotic. I had just finished binge-watching a series on Netflix and was about to head to bed. The clock on my wall ticked softly, showing it was a little past midnight. I turned off the TV and the lights, leaving just a soft glow from my bedside lamp to guide me through my nightly routine. As I moved to close the living room curtains, a shiver ran down my spine, though I couldn't explain why. I reached out to grab the edge of the curtain when I saw it, a faint silhouette outlined against the pale light from the street lamp outside. I froze, my hand hovering inches from the fabric. My heart began to race as I squinted, trying to make out what it was. It looked like a person, standing perfectly still. The logical part of my brain tried to dismiss it as a trick of the light, but a creeping dread settled into my bones. Summoning my courage, I yanked the curtain open, expecting to find an empty space or some mundane explanation. Instead, I was met with the sight of a gaunt figure pressed up against the window, staring in at me with wide, unblinking eyes. The face was pale and hollow, with sunken cheeks and dark circles that gave it a skeletal appearance. The figure's breath fogged up the glass slightly, adding to the eeriness. I stumbled backward, a gasp escaping my lips. My mind raced, trying to comprehend what I was seeing. Who was this person? And why were they here, staring into my home in the dead of night? I reached for my phone, intending to call the police, but the figure raised a hand, placing a long, bony finger against its lips as if to shush me. My blood ran cold. Just then, the lights flickered, plunging the room into momentary darkness. When they came back on, the figure was gone. I rushed to the window, peering outside into the rain-soaked night. There was no sign of anyone. The street was empty, save for the occasional car passing by. I tried to steady my breathing, telling myself that I must have imagined it, that the darkness and rain had played tricks on my mind. But the sense of unease lingered. I double-checked all the locks, making sure every door and window was securely fastened. As I made my way back to my bedroom, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The rain continued its relentless assault on the roof, and every creak of the house made me jump. Lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, every nerve on edge. The curtains in my bedroom were drawn tightly shut, but I could almost imagine the same hollow face peering in at me from behind them. I turned on my side, pulling the covers up to my chin, willing myself to fall asleep. It was then I heard it, a soft tapping sound coming from the direction of the living room. My heart pounded in my chest as I strained to listen. The tapping grew louder, more insistent, like fingernails drumming against the glass. I couldn't ignore it any longer. Grabbing my phone and switching on the flashlight, I crept down the hallway, the beam of light trembling in my hand. When I reached the living room, I found the curtains slightly ajar. Summoning every ounce of bravery, I pulled them back. The window was fogged up, but this time there was a clear message scrawled across the glass: "I see you." My breath caught in my throat, and I backed away, feeling a presence behind me. Slowly, I turned, raising the flashlight. Standing in the doorway was the same gaunt figure, now inside my house, closer than ever. Its eyes gleamed with an unnatural light, and it smiled, a ghastly grin that chilled me to the core. I let out a scream, dropping the phone as the light went out. The last thing I saw was the figure lunging towards me, and then everything went black. When I came to, I was lying on the floor, the room eerily silent. The figure was gone, and the only evidence of the encounter was the message on the window. To this day, I don't know who or what that figure was. But I moved out of that house shortly after, haunted by the memory of those eyes watching me through the rain.
The rain beat down on the roof with an intensity that made it hard to hear anything else. I was home alone, curled up on the couch with a good book, trying to ignore the storm raging outside. My apartment felt cozier than usual, the steady rhythm of the rain creating a soothing backdrop to my evening. I had just settled into the story when I heard a strange noise coming from the kitchen. At first, I thought it was just the old pipes groaning, but the sound was too deliberate, almost like a whisper. I set my book down, heart beginning to race, and strained to listen. The noise persisted, a soft, scraping sound, like something being dragged across the floor. Telling myself it was probably just my imagination, I decided to investigate. I grabbed my phone, turning on the flashlight app, and cautiously made my way to the kitchen. The hallway felt longer than usual, shadows stretching and contorting in the dim light. As I reached the kitchen door, I paused, trying to gather the courage to push it open. Taking a deep breath, I stepped inside and swung the light around. At first glance, everything appeared normal. The familiar sight of my cluttered countertops and dirty dishes offered a brief sense of relief. But then, I saw it. A dark figure crouched in the corner by the refrigerator. My breath caught in my throat, and I froze. The figure was shrouded in shadow, its form indistinct and eerie. I took a hesitant step forward, and the thing shifted, revealing a pair of glowing, malevolent eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness. Panic surged through me, and I stumbled backward, nearly dropping my phone. The figure moved slowly, its limbs unnaturally long and contorted. It made that same scraping sound as it dragged itself closer. I couldn't tear my eyes away from those glowing eyes, filled with an otherworldly malice. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs felt rooted to the spot. The figure reached out with a skeletal hand, its fingers impossibly long, and I finally found my voice, letting out a strangled scream. That scream seemed to break the spell, and I turned and bolted back down the hallway. I fumbled with the lock on the front door, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the key. The scraping sound grew louder, closer, and I could feel the figure's presence looming behind me. With a final, desperate effort, I managed to unlock the door and burst out into the rain. I ran to my neighbor's house, pounding on the door until they answered, their expressions a mix of concern and confusion. Breathless and drenched, I tried to explain what had happened, but my words came out jumbled and frantic. They let me in, calming me down with a warm drink and a blanket. I called the police, who arrived quickly and went to investigate my apartment. When they returned, they told me they found nothing. No sign of forced entry, no strange figure lurking in the shadows. They assured me it was likely just a trick of the storm, a combination of shadows and my imagination playing tricks on me. But I knew what I had seen, and the fear that had gripped me was all too real. That night, I stayed with my neighbors, too terrified to return to my apartment. The rain continued to pour, and I lay awake, listening to its relentless rhythm. Every creak and groan of the old house sending my heart racing. I knew that the figure in my kitchen was real, and the thought of facing it again was more than I could bear. Days passed, and I eventually moved out, unable to shake the memory of those glowing eyes and the sinister presence that had invaded my home. Even now, I avoid being alone during storms, haunted by the fear that the figure is still out there, waiting for another rainy night to return.
It was a dark and stormy night, the kind that makes you want to curl up under a blanket with a good book and a hot cup of tea. I had been home alone, listening to the rain batter against the windows and the distant rumble of thunder. The electricity had flickered a few times but held steady. With nothing better to do, I decided to run a hot bath and relax. As the tub filled with steaming water, I lit a few candles to create a soothing ambience. The bathroom, usually a sanctuary, felt comforting as the warm light danced on the tiled walls. I slipped into the tub, sighing as the hot water eased my muscles. Outside, the storm raged on, creating a symphony of natural sounds that lulled me into a state of near meditation. A loud crash of thunder jolted me from my reverie. The lights flickered and then went out, plunging the house into darkness. Only the candles provided a faint, flickering light. I tried to ignore the growing sense of unease, blaming it on the storm and my overactive imagination. I closed my eyes and tried to relax again. Suddenly, I heard a noise. A soft, almost imperceptible scratching sound. My eyes snapped open, and I strained to listen over the pounding rain. It seemed to be coming from the bathroom door. I called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" There was no answer, just the continuous scratching. My heart started to pound in my chest. Slowly, I got out of the tub, wrapping a towel around myself. I approached the door cautiously, my breath catching in my throat. The scratching stopped as I reached for the doorknob. I hesitated for a moment before turning it and pulling the door open. The hallway was pitch black, and the house was eerily silent except for the rain. I took a step into the hallway, peering into the darkness. "Who's there?" I called again, my voice shaky. Still no response. I felt a cold draft brush past me, sending a shiver down my spine. I turned back to the bathroom, planning to grab my phone for a flashlight. That's when I saw it. In the dim candlelight, something moved near the mirror. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, a shadow cast by the flickering candles. But then I saw it again, a dark, indistinct shape, slowly materializing. My blood ran cold. It looked like a figure, tall and gaunt, with hollow eyes staring back at me from the mirror. I froze, unable to move or even scream. The figure seemed to come closer, its eyes boring into mine. The scratching sound started again, louder and more insistent. It wasn't coming from the door this time, it was coming from inside the bathroom. I backed away, my heart racing, but my feet felt like they were stuck in place. The figure reached out a hand, its fingers long and skeletal. I finally found my voice and screamed, stumbling backward out of the bathroom. I ran down the hallway, not daring to look back. I fumbled for my phone in the living room, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it. I turned on the flashlight and pointed it back towards the bathroom. There was nothing. The hallway was empty, and the bathroom door was wide open, revealing only the empty room beyond. The candles were still flickering, casting harmless shadows on the walls. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my pounding heart. Maybe it was just my imagination, a product of the storm and the dark. I spent the rest of the night in the living room, every light in the house turned on. Sleep was impossible. When morning finally came, I cautiously returned to the bathroom. There was no sign of the figure or the strange scratching sound. But the memory of those hollow eyes and skeletal hand haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been in my bathroom that night, something that wasn't just a figment of my imagination.